The demographics of Cascade are the future of Oregon. And for me, Cascade is an exciting vision of what this state is becoming and needs to become. I've been thinking, as I was been preparing these remarks about, okay, so what are a couple of stories that I could tell people about just how hope is fulfilled at this place? And one that came to mind, this summer I was cleaning out my papers. Kiki's gonna laugh. Okay, I do this every summer, and it's an exercise in futility for me. But anyway, I got to the point where I came across a newspaper clipping of a former student who, I think he was a student maybe in the early 90s. And he was a young guy, African-American guy, local kid from the neighborhood. And not a great student. If it wasn't for Cascade, he probably wouldn't have gone to college. But he had a kind of drive to succeed that wasn't immediately apparent. But the more he was here, the more people cared for him, the more it came out. He took he took a beginning writing class with me. As he came in, it looked like he was going to get a C. He ended up with a B. And that may well have been the last B he got at this place. I think he got all A's afterwards. Transferred to Portland State, did pre-medicine, went to OHSU, got his medical degree. One of the really interesting things about him, though, was even while he was at Portland State, and even while he was at OHSU, as he was studying, for his MCATs, he would do his studying here at Cascade in the library. So some of you here may know who I'm talking about. And this was his home. This was his community. This is where he was nurtured. And this was what gave him the strength to be successful. I did a little internet search to find out what's become of him, and found, to my sadness, that he's left the state. He apparently met a woman who lives in Texas, who's from Texas, and love won out. And so he's practicing medicine in Texas, and is now on the city council of the small town that he was, where he's living. And you think about the return on investment that he represents, in his own investment certainly, but the investment of the teachers who worked with him, and the investment of our society in making this place possible for him. It's really, it's a great story when you think about it. The other one that I've been thinking about, it happened last spring. I ran into a student that I'd had way back when I first started here at PCC. I mean, it was like 25 years ago that I had this student. And I was at, of all places, a legislative hearing down in Salem. One of the things I do a lot is go down and testify. Thanks to my friend Rob Wagner, who's always roping me in, to tell the story of educators with respect to the need for education funding and healthcare, etc. Anyway, I ran into this woman who, she looked vaguely familiar, and she came over and she introduced herself, and all of a sudden, her face was the same. Her hair was much more under control than she was. You remember what it was like back then, 25 years ago. And she told me who she was, and my jaw must have hit the floor. I was so happy and so just gratified to see her. As it happened, we were testifying on opposite sides. But anyway, that night she sent me an email, and in that email she revealed to me that when she went to college, she loved writing when she was a kid. She had a kind of a troubled background, and writing was a way for her to cope with it. She graduated from high school and went to the university, and her first writing teacher told her that she wrote like somebody who came out of a trailer park, and she didn't belong in this place. And so consequently she dropped out and was out of school for a number of years. Her ex-husband by then, her ex-husband had been a student of mine, and he told her, take Michael's class, really. He'll work with you, he'll tell you, he'll be straight with you, etc. She was a great writer. Who knows what caused that person to say what he said. But she was a great student, and in this email, she wrote me to tell me that just how important that was for her, and how it gave her the self-confidence and the will to go on. And she went on, she got a law degree, she's now the chief counsel for this organization that I'm often on the other side of. Oh, we work together a lot, don't get me wrong. We work together a lot, but we're often on the other side, and unfortunately, I may have taught her how to write too well. So, oh well. Not that Bill. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. So these are, as I said, these are stories of hope, but they're also stories of investment. We as teachers, we as a society made an investment in these individuals, and the investment has paid off enormously. This spirit of hope, of investment, of shared responsibility is what I mean by a progressive vision. You see the word progressive being thrown around a lot. That's what I mean by progressive. And that's why I'm running for the legislature today. Too often, though, this school, its students, and the residents of this state have been the victims of a refusal to spread hope and to invest. Like many of you, I experienced the budget cuts of the mid-'80s and the early '90s and those devastating cuts of just a few years ago. I've seen their effects. I've seen students having to drop out or not signing up because they couldn't afford the tuition or fees, or because they've been bounced off the Oregon health plan, and they or someone else in their family had medical needs that they could no longer meet. You can say that these cuts were the product of an unstable tax system in this state, and you'd be right. We have an unstable tax system that needs fixing. But it's really the result of larger tendencies. A tendency to think only in terms of the expedient short term. Gridlock caused by silos of competing interests. A tendency to think in terms of the narrow us as opposed to the broader us. A rigid adherence to the status quo. And it's a change in that mindset that we need in Salem.